There is so much emphasis these days on keeping our body healthy that we often forget our brain. The good news, however, is that what's good for the body is also good for the brain. One cannot function without the other. Our brain is a highly complex structure, and scientists are learning more and more about its enormous potential every day. It's not so long ago when neuroscientists believed that the function and structure of the brain was fixed throughout adulthood, and neuroplasticity only happened in childhood. Though the term plasticity was mentioned by American philosopher and psychologist William James in 1890 in his book The Principles of Psychology. The first person to use the term neuroplasticity is believed to be the Polish neuroscientist Jerzy Konorski. But it really wasn't until the 1970s that neuroplasticity was seriously taken on board. It's estimated that there are around 86 billion neurons in the human brain. Neurons, or nerve cells, are the core units of the brain and nervous system. They are responsible for receiving sensory input from the outside world and for sending motor commands along chemical synapses to our muscles. Chemical synapses are like junctions through which the signals from the neurons can be sent to each other. The fact that we now know the brain is malleable means that we can work to make it operate better for us. This is where exercise, healthy eating and other components come into the picture. Let's start with exercise. Exercise helps the brain to function at its best. Why? Well, it can help increase our dopamine levels. Dopamine is responsible for keeping us motivated. When scientists turned off the dopamine neurotransmitter in rats, they became lethargic and didn't even have the motivation to eat. So you can see just how important dopamine is. If you are feeling unmotivated, then it could be that your dopamine levels are pretty low. Exercise also increases norepinephrine, which is responsible for alertness, arousal, and speeding up reaction time. In addition, it helps to improve our memory. It plays a role in mood and our ability to concentrate. Serotonin also gets a boost. Serotonin influences our mood and can contribute to how happy we feel. Low levels of serotonin can make us feel anxious, worried and angry. The British National Health Service says on its website that exercise is the miracle cure we've always had, but for too long we've neglected to take our recommended dose. Inactivity is killing our brains and the cure is free. The best form of exercise for the brain is high-intensity physical exercise, the ones which will leave you breathless. Dancing is a good example of this. In one study, scientists found that the complex movements of dancing recruit different motor and cognitive brain areas. It also modifies white and grey matter in various brain regions. So what else? Relaxation benefits the brain. Too much ongoing emotional and mental stress can cause brain shrinkage. Your brain cannot cope with doing a number of things at once. Concentrating on one thing at a time with a break of 5 minutes in between each task is recommended by Dr. Sandy Bond Chapman, who is the founder and leader of the Center for Brain Health at UT Dallas. She describes multitasking as the bane of our society and goes on to say that science shows it breaks down the brain at every level and increases stress. Dr. Bond recommends single-minded focus on just one thing, giving our brains time to absorb and synthesize ideas. Reduce the amount of big information. Big data freezes our brains, she says. Dr. Kerry Ressler, Chief Scientific Officer at McLean Hospital and Professor of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, says there's evidence to suggest that chronic or persistent stress may actually rewire our brains and not in a good way. He says scientists have learned that animals that experience prolonged stress have less activity in the parts of their brains that handle higher order tasks, for example the prefrontal cortex, and more activity in the primitive parts of our brain that are focused on survival, such as the amygdala. Dr. Ressler compares it with exercising one part of our body at the expense of another. One part gets stronger and the other weaker. It's the same with the brain in rats that experienced ongoing stress. That part of the brain dealing with threats was built up, but the part of the brain tasked with complex thought was neglected. Cutting down on stress should be a top priority. We can do this through meditation, listening to music, chatting with friends, watching comedy shows, or reading funny books. Getting a good night's sleep is another important factor. Sleep clears waste from the brain and supports learning and memory. Scientists found that during sleep there was an increased interstitial fluid volume and clearance of metabolic waste products from the brain. So make sure to get plenty of Z's. Our brains also love learning new things, and when we learn, we create new neural pathways. The more we practice, the stronger those pathways become. However, we need to keep it up throughout our lives as our brain quickly gets used to the status quo and adapts easily. So try to learn something new every day. It could be a new recipe, a new word, a new way of undertaking something you've been doing for some time. Novelty is what we're aiming for. Of course, diet is also fundamental. Dr. Dale Bredesen, who is a professor of neurology and author of the book The End of Alzheimer's, says a plant-rich diet with 70% of our calories coming from fat is best for the brain. We can get our fat from fish such as salmon, tuna, sardines, along with avocados, nuts and seeds. Avoid sugar and fast food. You may like them, but your brain doesn't. To recap, to have a healthy brain, exercise should be your number one goal, followed by deep relaxation and sleep. Add in plenty of fun like games, meeting up with friends for a coffee or lunch, watching funny videos and TV shows, and finally eating healthily, and you should be well on your way to having a healthy brain. We have only one brain. It does tremendous work for us, so treat it well and it will reward you over your lifetime.